Hi. Hello. We're here. Hope everybody can hear us. It's Charlotte
and Jessica.
And we're here at Aragon Wine Market. We are doing our virtual wine tasting this week.
That's right.
These has gotten to be lots of fun. I hope everybody's enjoying them. We probably will continue to do them for a couple more weeks, and then we'll see where we go from there.
And then maybe even once a month or once every couple of months or something like that, just to kind of keep that evergreen opportunity to record a wine tasting with a distributor or national distributor or vendor, or even a winemaker that we can have, because they're awesome conversations.
Yeah, and you're getting to see people that you just wouldn't always see in Pensacola.
Absolutely.
And you're able to come in, people that are not in Pensacola are able to be participate, like Wes Shoemaker, who loves the Viognier, who used to be in Pensacola but has moved away. And so so, and Josh Walker is here from Colorado. So it's very cool that, we get to see people, and you guys get to see us. And so what's going on at Aragon Wine Market? We are still doing the virtual wine tastings. We are still, we got our parking lot redone. So don't forget there's parking in the back. It's all nice and smooth now.
Absolutely.
And we've got numbered parking spaces, and you'll see that they've got signs that are designated just for Aragon Wine Market.
Yep.
You're always able to park in our little parking pad as well, our little driveway.
Yeah, there's ample parking in the back.
Come in the back.
And those curbside parking signs that we put up out front have really helped ease the parking concerns if you do just want to run in and grab something quick. Or if you want to make a phone call and hey, I'm outside. I've even had customers say, hey, I've got $20 and I want something under 20. And so we can definitely make that happen for you. So it's an in and out process. You don't have to come to the store if you don't want to.
Yeah.
But we've definitely got that available for you.
Yeah, it's super easy, super cool. I think the wave of the future is going to be probably, more of that kind of stuff, more curbside. We're wearing our mask here as well.
Yeah.
Just
being consciously aware of everything that's going on.
Cleaning, washing our hands.
So much cleaning.
Stuff we should have been doing anyway, right? So so tonight we've got a great winery that's joining us tonight.
So excited.
We're doing Yalumba. And Yalumba is one of the oldest wineries in Australia. They've been around for a long time.
167 years. They're 5 generations deep in their family with this winemaker, which is incredible.
Yep. And so we'll find out more from Camila is joining us tonight, and she's going to tell us more about it, and we'll add her in just a second. But we're going to do the Viognier first, and how this works is that you guys, I let you know what wines we're doing in advance. Hopefully you'll grab one of them and join us. If not, that's okay. Just grab whatever you've got and join us and still listen in. It's fun. So we're going to start with the Viognier, which is personally my favorite white grape. And so I'm excited about that. It's very aromatic, very gives the perception of sweetness without being sweet. It's kind of a heavier wine. That's what we're starting with, and then we're moving to the Shiraz, which is the traditional grape of Australia, the traditional red. It's the same grape as Syrah. So if you've heard Syrah, Shiraz and Syrah are the same. The Australians just have to call it something different because that's how they are.
Because they're cool.
Because that's how they are. So without further ado, we will add Michael Fix and Camila. Michael Fix is with Winebow. Hi,
Hello,
Michael. He's joining us as usual. And then Camila is here representing Yalumba. We'll see if we can try this one. Oh, that's perfect. Is this good? That's perfect.
We can see the 3 of us at the same time.
Yeah. Hi, guys.
Hello. Greetings from Pensacola, Florida.
Hello, from South Florida.
Oh, you're in Miami, I see.
I am. Well, Fort Lauderdale. Rainy Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
And Fixie's up there.
Wow. And are you staying safe down there?
What's that?
Are you staying safe down there? Staying
Yes.
safe?
Yes, we've been in quarantine. We haven't broken quarantine yet. So yes, definitely taking it very seriously.
No restaurants open?
Know what?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So in Pensacola, we've got some of our restaurants open, and some of our and the beaches are open yet, but not yet in Miami or in Fort Lauderdale.
No, just some of the restaurants have started to open at 50% capacity. None of the theme parks have really opened yet, so they're going in phases. The Keys open up in June 1st, so we'll see how the first phase goes.
Good. Well, I wish you well.
No, absolutely.
Thank you. Good to be with you all.
So, tell us about Yalumba. How long have you worked for Yalumba, and how did you get into the wine business?
Yeah, so I actually work for Winebow Imports, and my portfolio is called Negociants International. So I'm actually the importer for the wines, and I cover the Southeast U.S. So we have 5 states in the Southeast. I started working with wine. I started working in restaurants and worked with a really awesome mentor, George Miliotis, who's the master somm at the time for Darden, and now works at Disney Springs. He opened up his own wine bar over at Disney, and he's doing really, really well. And he really inspired me to study wine. And he actually got me my first distributor job with Breakthrough back in the day. And I was a sales and then went over to work for Winebow as a sales rep in Miami. And then eventually I started working as a supplier, and I went to work for Negociants USA. So it's been about 10 years in that whole
Yeah, that's a nice long time in the biz. And so when you started with Yalumba, have you been to Australia to visit them, or spent some time over there yet?
I was supposed to go in April for the first time, and
That's awful.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's actually my second year working with the importer. So I was supposed to go this past April and visit all the vineyards and all that. And it's going to be rescheduled for sometime next year. So,
Wow.
So the Viognier is in the south of Australia, and just explain this for me a little bit more. I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. The Viognier, so it's about west of Melbourne, quite a bit.
Yeah, so I don't know if y'all can see my map.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I love maps too. I'm a map person. So here, Australia, it kind of looks a lot like the continental US. So up here in West Australia, and it might be backwards for you, but here we have the Indian Ocean, and down here would be the Southern Ocean, here the Pacific Ocean. Down here is Tasmania, and along this coastline down here is pretty much where all the vineyards in Australia are. So in Australia, the further south you go, the colder it gets, because down here, you can't see it, that's where Antarctica is. So all that cold weather comes across the ocean and really influences the vines, and that's why it's perfect for producing wine in this southern part of Australia. So Yalumba, which we're discussing today, is actually in the state of South Australia. And really in this region here, this is where Barossa is, where McLaren Vale is, Adelaide Hills, where all those key regions are, right there in South Australia. And I just want to talk about Yalumba a little bit because it's such an important winery for Australia and for the world. So I'm lucky enough to work with wineries that have a lot of history and provenance back in the countries where they're from. Mostly I work with wineries from Australia, a little bit from New Zealand, and one from South Africa. But Yalumba is really special because it was actually the first winery in Australia. They opened their doors in 1849, and it was 5th generation, but the oldest daughter, Jessica Hill Smith, which is 6th generation, actually started working with the winery. She came back home and has been taking over a lot of the marketing and the business. So it's now 6th generation, which is a really big deal in Australia. Yeah, they fought really hard to stay family owned and operated. Some wineries started around that same time, a few years after they did, but they've sold to the bigger companies like Treasury, like a big one is Penfolds, which is also really famous, but they're no longer family owned and operated. It's really hard to remain that way. So we're really proud to say that we're family owned and operated. And if you ever go to Australia, these are wines that are actually consumed. You'll see Yalumba being poured by the glass at numerous bistros and cafes all over the country. So it's something that is really unique to Australia and they're really proud of.
So, and I also know Yalumba is sustainable and the wines are vegan. When did that come about? And is that, obviously that's important to the family.
Yeah, so sustainability is really important to the family, and it's something that, because they are family owned, they want to make sure it's not for trend, it's because they are family owned. It's something that they want to pass down, you know, generations and generations. So they want to do the best that they can to make sure that the vines are healthy, that the vineyards are healthy, that their business is healthy. So everything's done with sustainability in mind. And when it comes to being vegan, it's actually really interesting because in the winemaking process, sometimes a lot of wineries will use animal proteins to fine the wine.
Yeah.
And what fining does is it really takes away a lot of things that we don't want from the wine, like a lot of residue, a lot of solids that are left in the wine. And it's really efficient in doing that. But sometimes we feel like it's too efficient and it takes away all the bad things, but also some of the awesome characteristics that we love in the wine. So what they use instead for fining is clay, which is naturally vegan. So now it's a thing, it's really popular. There's a lot of vegan restaurants and a lot of, you know, people that are looking to be a little bit more healthy. So so it's great to just note that the wines are vegan, but it's something that they've done for hundreds of years. It's just the way that they've always produced the wine.
So that's something that they've done it that way for a long time, and it's not something new. Wow.
It's not something new. They've pretty much always used clay, and all of their wines across the board, starting from Y series, which is their entry tier, all the way to their top tier wines, are all vegan.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's good, because we do have a lot of people in Pensacola. Pensacola is a quirky little town, and we have a lot of people coming in that want specifically.
And I think it goes to more than just like wanting to eat healthy. There are so many people that have, you know, actual health-related dietary restrictions that their body feels better if they operate a certain way. And when you can find that across the board in your lifestyle and find a wine that supports that process, and you know, I think that's really wonderful. I had no idea until it was mentioned earlier, and Charlotte said they're vegan. I was like blown away, because I think that's such an important note to have. You know, the sustainability is huge for us.
Well, I think it's important to note that I'm so glad that we're doing these virtual wine tastings, because I actually start looking into the different aspects of it. And I've sold Yalumba we've been open almost 12 years. And I just now know that they're vegan. You know, I mean, that's pretty impressive, and you know, it's something that I should know. So I'm learning as well as everybody else is during these tastings.
We might have opened Pandora's box, because a lot of vegans didn't realize that some wines aren't vegan, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, which wines are vegan?" I don't know. So sometimes it kind of ruined their day when I highlight that some wines aren't vegan. They're like, "What?"
No, you're right. You're right.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's something that but if you are vegan, you should know that. So I know I'm not afraid to open that box.
Yeah, I love to highlight that fact. It's a fun fact for sure.
Yeah. So I love the fact that they've done that. And the first one, I don't know if you want to talk any more about the winery, or if you want to talk about the Viognier, because the Viognier is the first one we have on deck to try. I hope you've got some with you.
I do. Yes. Okay. Right here. Of course I do.
We are drinking it as well.
Yeah, we could jump right into Viognier. I mean, there's so much history with the winery. But Viognier is something that's really special to the winery. The winemaker, Louisa Rose, she really believes in the variety, and she's a world leader for Viognier. So when Yalumba first started producing Viognier, it was pretty much a variety that was extinct everywhere else in the world. There were just a few hectares left in Condrieu, which is where Viognier comes from. And the reason why is because no one really learned about it in winemaking school. It wasn't a variety that was really popular at the time. But also it's a really confusing variety for a lot of people. both in the vineyard and in the cellar. It's a really difficult variety if you don't know what you're doing to produce. But once you get it, and obviously Yalumba's been honing in on this variety, they make this. The Y series is just one of 6 different bottlings of Viognier.
Different Viogniers? Oh, wow.
Yeah, 6 different Viogniers, different tiers, and then we have a late harvest Viognier, which is Botrytis Viognier, which we actually have in inventory. And they use Viognier sometimes to co-ferment with Shiraz, which is a popular practice in Côte Rôtie as well.
Explain that to people, though. I don't know that everybody knows. So people see a red wine and it's and they just think, oh, it's Shiraz, but it may have a little white wine blended in with it.
Yeah, especially in South Australia, they do like to blend in a little Viognier, and it's perfectly okay. There's certain amounts that you're allowed to put in the wine for it to, not change the label, but typically it's very little, just a little splash goes a long way. 1 to 5% typically is what goes in the wine. But what Viognier does, and the reason why we love it, is because it enhances the wine aromatically.
Yeah.
And it's just so pretty. And there's a chemical reaction that happens with Viognier and Shiraz where it intensifies the color of the reds.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Viognier, it's a really cool variety. It's a full-bodied wine, and it's naturally lower in acid, which is something that a lot of people ask me about because they're like, I don't know, I don't like to drink, white wine because it's so acidic, it hurts my stomach. And really, Viognier is the only wine that's more red-like than any other white.
I say that all the time. I say it's a white wine for a red wine drinker. Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly right. And that's how the winemaker would definitely describe it. And it's because the acid levels are lower and there's tannin in the wine. And when it comes to white wine, we don't really talk about tannin. But Viognier, a lot of that freshness and kind of lightness on its feet, that's really where it's coming from. It's kind of like those bitter tannins in the wine that are more, pertinent when we're talking about red wine. But with Viognier, tannins, low acid are definitely key components of the wine. And it's a beautiful aromatic wine. Pairing wise, it's really, really fun. Back at the winery, they always host brunches. So they do obviously egg dishes and hollandaise and smoked salmon. So it can really stand up to heavier creamy dishes. Yeah, you can do obviously with white meats or with more vegetarian dishes like butternut squash. And because it has kind of like that chamomile, ginger, kind of those Asian spices, it can pair well with Asian cuisine, curries, pad thai. It's a really fun wine.
Versatile.
Yeah, you have to kind of just be aware of the acidity in the food. But yeah, if you can pair it with like bigger, like more like creamier sauces.
So, and I'm just curious that you do 6 different Viogniers.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of difference between the 6? Because that seems incredible that they could make 6 different ones. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the philosophy with Y series is their entry level. This is what we love to pour for by the glass at restaurants because it's all about drinkability, approachability, food wine pairing opportunity. So the Y series is really fresh, it's crisp. It doesn't see any oak, so it's all done in stainless steel. The next level, I guess up, but I actually prefer this one than the next level. It's more appellation driven, which is the Eden Valley Viognier, and it does see a little bit of oak, and it's coming only from Eden Valley. Then the next level up, it's coming from the oldest part of the vineyard in Eden Valley, and it's a barrel selection, which is the Virgilius, which they compare a lot to Guy Gall's Condrieu. They love putting in tastings, and that's kind of like, the benchmark for Viognier. Then we do an organic Viognier, which is all coming from their organic vineyards. The Botrytis, which is the late harvest Viognier. And then they do an eau de vie. Back in Australia, we don't import it here, but they have that as well.
That's interesting.
Different tiers, different levels of age in the vines, different oak regimens. This for me is such a pretty expression though, and it's hard to get this quality of Viognier for $12.
Oh, for sure.
I was just going to note the price that for $12, this is crisp, delicious. You know, it's already in late May gotten super hot. And I'm sure, as you know, in South Florida, the temperature is rising. And to me, I'm not looking for anything buttery or oaky or heavy in that regard in this hot heat. And so this Viognier really steps forward for me and being just crisp and delicious. You hit on the honeysuckle and the chamomile and the ginger and all of those elements. And I think that that's just a perfect indication of how, beautiful the wine finishes, and it's just so crisp.
I have a question. So you make all these different Viogniers, and I know you make a good amount of other varietals as well. And I was kind of noticing that you have a lot of several different winemakers as well. So is there like one winemaker that specializes in Viognier, or is it the winemaker specializes in this certain area of Australia?
That's a really good question. So Louisa Rose, she's the chief winemaker for Yalumba, and she oversees everything. She even oversees our other projects like Puseyville up in Eden Valley, and we even have a winery over in New Zealand, which she technically oversees. But she is always involved with all of the Viognier production. That's like her thing. And then we have Kevin Glastonbury, and he does all of the reds for Yalumba. And then we have other winemakers that help, like for Y Series, we have a different person, but they all roll up to Kevin, who ultimately rolls up to Louisa. But when it comes to Viognier, Louisa is always part of the winemaking process. I mean, she's technically winemaking process for everything, but especially for Viognier.
Yeah. When I was researching just the vineyard and kind of just educating myself on everything before our conversation today, I read something on the website and I really didn't know what it meant. And so I wanted to ask it. It says that the Viognier depicts vine cuttings. And I wanted to, can you hear me okay? It depicts vine cuttings. And I wanted to kind of speak to what that meant from a process standpoint, or what it, what my question was to Michael Fix when he got here, Pixie, when it was, does that inherently affect the taste of the wine? And it just was kind of a broad question. So if I could pose that to you, when the website says it depicts vine cutting, what does that inherently mean?
Yeah, so vine cuttings is really important to Australia. Back in the 1840s, they collected cuttings pretty much from everywhere else in the world, and they planted it in the botanical gardens in South Australia. Now, Yalumba, when they were replanting their other vineyard for Oxford Landing, they needed quality vine material. So they decided to start their own nursery. So they had their own nursery at Yalumba. They're one of the only wineries in the world to have its own nursery on site. And then all the neighbors started noticing that they had vine cuttings and they had their own nursery. And there's a lot that goes into it because Australia never got phylloxera, which is what devastated all of Europe's vineyards, basically. So they have really high standards for when they bring over vine cuttings from France or from Germany or Rhone, wherever they come from, they have to be put into quarantine, and they have really strict standards for them to go into the Yalumba nursery. So this depicts, the cuttings that were brought over from France that were planted in Australia. And it really also depicts the fact that Yalumba is one of the only wineries that has its own nursery on site. So they have complete control over the quality of the plant material in a way that many other wineries in the world don't have control over. And obviously, if you own it, you're going to pick the best vine cuttings for your bottlings. And then they're actually a commercial nursery, and they sell those vines to neighboring wineries, and they had to basically operate as a commercial nursery because everybody was asking them for it.
So I'm curious, nobody has asked any questions in our stream. If anybody has any questions, you guys please throw them out there, and we'll ask Camilla.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Virginia.
Yeah.
We're so happy to have you guys joining us.
Quite a few people joining us, and so ask any questions and we'll pass them along. I'm curious to know how many people have ever had Viognier before. My first time having Viognier was having was experiencing it in Virginia Viognier.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then of course Australia and well, in France, of course. But so it's kind of neat to see it getting more popular and seeing people come in and actually asking for it now, which is in 12 years you haven't seen it. You know, you didn't see people doing that so often.
Yeah. Did Fixie have a question? I see him raising his hand.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember, like, just be like, any kind of guy right now, but like, think about your buying online. Nursery, they have barrel, the amount of care that you put on that fish, like this is, that's what really starts does.
That's a good point. Well, I think that's a good point. And like one of the things I wanted to do was showcase it because people don't know a lot about Australian white wines. They think Shiraz, and which we're about to move to that as well. And Shiraz is delicious there, but it's nice to have a white option. And I'm so glad. Oh, somebody said we can't hear Fixie at all. Oh, dang. Sorry.
Yeah, I couldn't hear him, but it seemed like you could hear him. So I was just.
Well, the only reason I can hear him is because he's in the room with me. Well, I'm like, oh, good point. And everybody else is like, All right. Well, so one of the things that he was saying was that, people don't know about Australian whites, and so it's good that we're showcasing this. They think reds and there are wonderful reds in Australia. Shiraz. In fact, I think that maybe we should try this one next, the Shiraz, and we can talk about this next. Because Shiraz is traditionally known as, as the red of Australia, and traditionally the Australian wine. If somebody comes in asking for an Australian wine, what am I going to take them to? It's always going to be a Shiraz because, that's what they're looking for. It's nice though for us, and myself included, since Viognier is my favorite white grape, to be able to tell people about this, to let you know that there are options out there, because some people, are looking for something different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, you get set with the blinders on and you know that, oh, I like Chardonnay. That's what I like, and I don't like anything else, and I don't want to try anything else because I know that I like that. But my first exposure to this Y series Viognier actually came from the Y series, the unwooded Chardonnay, which kind of opened my eyes to, oh my goodness, this isn't oaky, this isn't buttery, this isn't wooded.
That's a good point because a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like Chardonnay."
Mm-hmm.
Well, have you tried all of the Chardonnays
There's a lot.
out there? There's a lot of Chardonnays out there. And we do for the Chardonnay. If you want to just pop in and Camilla and let us and give us a little stats on that. I don't know if you. I know we weren't preparing for that, but I'm sure you know that wine.
Yeah, so we do really well with the unoaked Chardonnay because Chardonnay has so many different dimensions. Sometimes when we think of Chardonnay, to your point, it's like we think buttery oaky, but that's really more what's done in the cellar, right? It's not really true to the variety itself, and it really does depend on the place that it comes from. So the unoaked Chardonnay, and really like the whole theme with Y series, like I said before, is about drinkability and about being able to pair it with food. So when you have a really buttery oaky Chardonnay, sure, there's a time and a place for it. But the unoaked Chardonnay is a style that really highlights the true characteristics of Chardonnay, which is a lot of like, Chardonnay is high in acid, so it's really bright. Depending on where it's from, it could have a lot of mineral notes as well, but also a lot of apples and pears, like depending on where it's from, warm climate, it could be like Granny Smith apple. It could have so many, different characteristics. And the fact that it doesn't have oak means that we're not masking those flavors, those mineral, bright fruit flavors that are naturally in Chardonnay. So
That's a great way to put it. I think we're having a couple of sound issues with Fix. A few people are commenting that they can't hear you, Michael. So just so you know, just a comment on that. But I think that's a really good. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I don't know what's up with your
We don't
mic.
have sound with you.
Oh, hold on. I see that.
Oh,
there's
wait,
a little
it just
thing.
crossed out?
Yeah. Try it now.
Testing.
I don't know. We'll work on that, but
We'll continue to work on our technical difficulties. But I love, and I lost my train of thought. So to go back to what you said about the Chardonnay didgeridoo.
and it may be good that we don't
It might
have.
be good that
we can't hear you because she's got the didgeridoo out now. So.
I have my ninja sword that my 6-year-old can borrow. To point.
He said it's from the books in Australia, and his wife got it for him directly there, so it's an authentic didgeridoo.
It is, and yeah, I don't think that you are able to hear you, but maybe we can get
your speaker.
Maybe we can get our producer over there to help figure that out. But I'm interested in what this sword is that Camilla has.
So my son got this at the fair a few months ago, and it's his ninja sword, and I like to use it to point at the map.
Oh, perfect. It's a good pointer as well.
Absolutely.
So going back a little bit just to Yalumba in general, how many acres of grapes do they have planted?
A lot. I would say like about 20,000 hectares maybe, but they encompass a lot of different regions, not just Barossa or Eden Valley. They have some vineyards in Coonawarra. They have some vineyards all the way over here in Margaret River. They actually have some vineyards over in Tasmania. So because they were the first, they also acquired a lot of land.
So, and do they own all that land, or do they collaborate with other people and buy the grapes?
Yeah, they do own a lot of the land, but they do like to purchase some fruit, depending on what bottling we're talking about, from growers, from sustainable growers in the region. Yeah. But in the town where they are, Angiston, which is here, and it's like right in the border of Barossa Valley and Eden Valley, like 80% of the business is agricultural, like 90%, and almost all of them work for Yalumba. So Yeah, so they're either buying grapes from them, or they're working in the vineyards, or they're working in the cellar, or they do their paperwork. So it's a big network, and they actually also have a distribution, like wine distribution business in Australia. That's how they were able to remain family owned, to have a little bit of cash flow during the depression.
Sure. And I mean, it's just, oh, there's Jess. Wow. How do you pop from bottom to bottom? Wow. It's magic.
If you pop up over here, I'm going to be very weirded out.
That would be super cool. Actually, I want to pop down there.
Yeah.
Oh, can't think. So Shiraz, we're going to move on to the Shiraz, and you've already moved on. I'm still going to finish up this, but, like, honestly, when people think of Shiraz, especially like we opened almost 12 years ago, and it was like crazy people coming in asking for Shiraz. I mean, like everybody had to have from, I'll just name some names out there, the Marquis Phillips and Trevor Jones, and it was huge. And then it was like, it almost crashed. Do you recall those years?
Yeah. Everything has its highs and lows, but Shiraz, like you said, when you think of Australian wine, like what do you think of? You think of Shiraz, just like you think of Chardonnay when you think of California or Cabernet. It's synonymous with the region. And what's interesting is that Shiraz is planted in every wine growing region in Australia. Shiraz is planted. And also Chardonnay is planted in every single wine growing region in Australia.
Wow.
But Shiraz really is the hero of South Australia. It was one of the earliest varieties planted there back in the 1840s, and it survived through every trend that's ever been. And the reason why is because it loves being in South Australia. It's a sun lover. It can survive in the heat. It can survive with very little water, and it's a bearer.
Well, I will say that, it was crazy back when we opened, but people still, it's still very popular. Mm-hmm. It's got a huge following, I would say, just because of the boldness. People that are looking for that pump,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different styles.
Yeah.
The pop. There's so many different styles of Shiraz, and sometimes what we see brought over is so one-dimensional. They're just like huge, like over-oaked, over-extracted, just like, almost like cocktail wines. They're super high in alcohol.
Sure.
And that was a trend for a really long time. And as, every other wine region in the world has shifted to wines that are more dialed back, that are more elegant, a little bit lower in alcohol, higher in acidity, a little bit easier to pair with food, that are easy drinking and more fragrant. Australia also moved in that direction.
Yeah.
So what I love about the Y series Shiraz, it's an example. It is varietally correct, but it's not over extracted or oaky or huge. It actually doesn't see any of it. So it's really fruity. It's a little jammy. You get a lot of black fruits and a lot of blue fruits and some red fruits, and that's because it's coming from Eden Valley. The fruit's coming from Eden Valley. So that's high country, so really high elevation. So that's where you get a lot of those floral notes. Mm-hmm. And then we also are getting fruit from the valley floor. So that's where you get a lot of those blackberries, blueberries, plums, some of that cocoa, chocolates, and they blend it all together. And that's where you get this beautiful, really expressive Shiraz that's also really bright and pretty. And you can have multiple glasses, and it's not going to fatigue your palate. And it's great for drinking outdoors, like now that it's like, beautiful, well, not lately, but when it's beautiful outside and you're grilling out, it pairs really well with like barbecue or anything that has char. It's really, really versatile, and you don't need like a huge steak to stand up to it. You can pair it with pork, you can pair it with butternut squash even, or falafel. It's just a really pretty example of Shiraz.
It is, and pretty is a good word for it too, mm-hmm. because I feel like what you described was kind of how Zins also went through a phase where everything was like super high in alcohol and everybody wanted like super extracted and this and that. But this is definitely, as you say, dialed down, 13.5% alcohol, which, I mean, for a Shiraz, that's like almost unheard of, you know. And so it's good to see that you guys are moving into that direction and keeping it, you know, easy drinking and stuff that, you know, like we can have a glass or two and not be under the bed.
Yeah, I really hit on the notes that you said of rich, and to me, my first thoughts were rich and ripe blackberries and blueberries, picking up some chocolate elements, and then, you know, maybe a little hint of berry, but not a lot, just like kind of in that chocolatey, yummy goodness of the cocoa. And then when I went to read the description of it fully and get a full understanding of it, it made perfect sense, because it is that delicious, rich and ripe without being so overpowering that you couldn't pair it with anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely enjoy it by itself or with it.
And I think we have a lot of customers that come in looking for, with it being Florida, you know, we're looking for, some people are inherently love reds, and you know, they're not necessarily looking to pair it with anything. A number of the customers this week that have come in have said,
sure.
I just want a great wine to drink on the porch. Sun has set. It's a beautiful, you know, a beautiful evening, and I'm not really moving into food just yet. And this is definitely along the lines of that to me.
Hey, what about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
The dish. No, I'm not gonna play. I'm not gonna play.
Please
Please.
My wife would be so happy to hear that nobody could hear me. She would probably just love that. She would say, my whole family would probably say that. They would say, I think that's probably a change for the good. But I don't. Did we talk about the cooperage, the barrel on the label here? So, just to give you a Cliff's note of all the stuff I was saying that nobody heard, that nobody wants to ever hear again. Yalumba puts a lot of time and effort into their wines. We've learned that. We talked about the nursery. We talked about vegan. We talked about wild yeast potentially. I don't know if I heard that. But also there's a cooper. I was talking about it, right? But there's also a cooperage, meaning they make their own barrels here. So you have that barrel on the label for you guys at home that are drinking that. And that's really important, again, for a wine that's, you know, something you can drink any night of the week. And these guys are making their own barrels for this wine. So maybe, Camille, you could talk a little bit about what that entails.
Yeah, that's wow. They're line priced at $12. I mean, like, talking about a everyday drinking wine that over delivers.
Absolutely.
And the Oak Chardonnay. I mean, they've 100%. Got the whole Y series line is like something you can just grab and go.
It's definitely a wine series between all of them. The Oak Chardonnay, not unwooded, like I said previously. The Shiraz, the Viognier, they're definitely like, fill your fridge, fill your, you know, cabinets with it, and drink it on the regular, you know, during the week. It's not a per se a special occasion wine unless you want to tear up to the next levels. But these are so good. Just, I mean, not that I want to have a daily wine, but hey, daily wines.
Daily wines. So to go back to your point, so yes, they do have their own cooperage on site. They're actually the only winery in the Southern Hemisphere to have its own cooperage on site. And the reason why that's important, it's because it's something that's really expensive to do. But back when they started, they needed to figure out some way to ship the wine everywhere in the world. And people were asking for it. You know, the UK was asking for it. Even over in India, people were asking for their wines. So it's a tradition that they continue to this day. And actually every year the winemaker, actually Kevin, he goes over to France and comes over to the US and picks out his own oak trees that are typically about 200 years of age. They pick their trees, they let it season at the place of origin, and then bring it over back to the winery, and then they craft their own barrels for their different bottlings. Now, when we get to the Y series, and their entry-level wines, they're using those barrels, but they're, you know, 3-year, 4-year use, but they're still barrels that they're crafting themselves. And sometimes at this price point at 12, you have a lot of wineries using a lot of like funny tricks, you know, oak chips and whatnot. That's really cutting corners.
In the vegan spectrum, at $12 a bottle, I think that's huge, especially for for my immediate friends that I know that how important that lifestyle is for them and those dietary restrictions are for them. To be able to hit all of those winning marks, it's delicious and it's vegan and it's only $12. Those are ticks under the belt that definitely make it something easy to take home.
And so we found the natural wine trend has Pensacola. People are coming in looking, specifically asking for natural wines, and we have a natural wine section and that sort of thing. But those wines are, they're pricey. To be able to get a natural wine, and I would say this is a natural wine. There's varying degrees of natural, and I would say this falls in that category. And to get it at this kind of price point is pretty spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get a lot of value, and yeah, I think the natural wine movement, if you will, is really popular, but there's really no governance around the term natural, so it's really up for interpretation. Like sustainability, that's way more controlled.
Right.
There's a lot of checks that you have to make sure that you do in the vineyard and also in the winery. Organic, biodynamic, those things, you have a lot of bodies governing what actually is a biodynamic or organic wine or even sustainable wine. But natural wine is kind of like a loose term. By my standards, this wine is just as natural as any other wine. To Vixie's point, we use natural yeast. And I know this is super geeky and it may mean nothing to anyone, but when you have a winery that's huge and massive and pumping out millions of cases or thousands of cases, they'll use a little packet of inoculated yeast. They'll put it in their wine, and it's very predictable what it does, ferment the sugars at a very predictable level. But using native yeast is hard. They're unpredictable. You have to baby them. You have to really watch them. But really, you get a lot more complexities and layers in the wine. You get, it's not a one-dimensional wine. You get a lot of different dimensions, and a lot of that comes from the native yeast fermentation, which is really hard to control if you don't know what you're doing. And that's as natural as it comes. So it really depends what your definition of natural wine is.
Yeah, and you're totally right. Like I said, the spectrum of natural wines. And so,
absolutely.
When people first started coming in and asking for natural wines, I was like, well, they are all kind of natural, depending on, But
I think that it's a really good, with a vineyard and with a wine, wine company like Yalumba that has been around for 6 generations. You're talking 167 years. There has to be a sustainable practice that goes into the production of the wine. Otherwise, their land would be depleted. And I think that's such a beautiful element that we're really highlighting across a number of different winemakers is that, you get what out of the earth, that you put back into the earth. And if you continuously deplete it, then you're not going to have the harvests that are exceptional. And so I think it's a beautiful thing to note that, while everything might not be that biodynamic, specification, there's still incredible organic wines that we're just learning, that I'm learning after 4 months of being in the industry, and Bella's learning in 12 years that are vegan as well.
Yeah, right?
That's huge for that specific clientele, and maybe bigger than that specific clientele. I had no idea that there would be animal proteins. I need to educate myself. I didn't know there were animal proteins that were fattening or were building up the components of a wine. So I think that's really fascinating to kind of dive into, and these conversations allow for that.
So going to the Shiraz, which we've moved to it. I know you've moved on to it as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how it's made? Stainless. It's got a little oak. What is it? Tell us that part.
So it's funny that it's really funny because I told the winemaker, I'm like, it's really funny that we're paying homage to the fact that we have our own cooperage on site, but this Shiraz actually doesn't see any oak. It's all stainless steel, so it's all about.
I thought that. That's why I started with stainless.
Yeah, it's stainless steel, so it really preserves the freshness of the fruit and the acidity, which is really the whole goal with the Y Series line.
Yeah, but it's so funny because it's got such a depth to it that it does not come off as just total. Is Michael Fix getting his didgeridoo ready to play?
No, I'm gonna put a stopper in the bottom of the didgeridoo and fill it with bottles of Shiraz, and I'm gonna make my own didgeridoo aged Shiraz. It's gonna be all the rage at St. Kilda in Australia when people are going out to hang out by the beach. It's gonna be really amazing if any of you are familiar with what St. Kilda is. But that's going to be my gift to the Australian wine industry. It's going to be the didgeridoo aged wine. You watch, Camile's going to tell you all about this. They're going to start aging wine in your dish.
No doubt.
And we'll get you a couple bottles of that, or we'll do a port wine. We definitely should talk about the port wine before we go today too. Also,
we do have the port wine. I don't know if Charlotte has it. I think we tasted it when I was in your store, maybe.
You may have
tasted it. Yeah.
I mean, the ports. I'm not sure. Going back to the Viognier, the late harvest Viognier, I'd be definitely interested in that.
We will bring one.
What?
We have a 21-year. There's a 21-year-old and a 50-year-old port that are still available right now in the States. Presumably because a lot of restaurants are obviously closed, and obviously we're sad about that. But that's a product that we see in a lot of steakhouses and places like that. And these are things that typically we don't always have available. So if anybody's really looking for like a really cool Porto, and Australia is actually famous for port for a variety of reasons, because of their drinking habits at the time, and also because of shipping, exporting, and importing it. And so if you want a really great port, you will have an amazing experience with a tawny from Yalumba specifically because of just the history behind it and how good they are. And compared to a port of that age from Portugal, it would be a lot more money to get one from there. So again, we talk about value, but those are really, really cool, delicious Portos. So they're available. Just call me or call Charlotte.
A 50-year-old available, because that was just released to the U.S. and we only got like a handful of, like, I want to say like 5 cases for the whole state, and they come in 3-packs.
Which one was that?
The 50-year-old tawny port.
Okay.
Wow.
Good.
Really good. Yeah.
I have who bought some, so it's out there, guys. You have seen it in a restaurant somewhere locally. I won't say where, but it is out there.
Okay. That sounds like a good plan.
Definitely. Well, thank you so
Okay,
much.
so
54
we've
minutes,
already taken up so much of your time, Camilla. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
And we look forward to seeing you back in Pensacola. Next time here, we'll plan something and maybe take you down and do some dinner or something like that, and talk more with Yalumba. And it was great to see you, and take care.
Absolutely. And in the short time, tell them thank you for letting us use that as a pointer. We really appreciate that.
I'll let him know.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
So that was cool.
That was cool.
Camilla,
I think
was very cool.
Yeah, I think that hits on a really good note, though. We're talking about all kinds of other wonderful wines from this series and from this winemaker and from other winemakers. We do special orders. So if there's something that you're interested in that we don't necessarily have on the shelf, when you come in, hey, I'm interested in this, or I'd like to try that.
Yeah.
50-year-old port. We'll do what we can to get it. We
actually do a lot of special orders.
Absolutely.
So, and especially if they're from Winebow, because we can get like one bottle for you to try without buying a full case from some of those other distributors.
And that's the coolest thing about, I feel like, that specific distributor is that you could get a bottle just to try, and you're in the house.
Well, and a lot of times people come in and they go, well, you know what? I want to try a Pinotage from South. No, don't laugh at me. This has happened to me. this has totally happened to me. I would like to try a Pinotage from South Africa. And I'm like, well, is there one in particular? No, I just want to try one. I'm like, well, guess what? Then I will go to Michael Fix and I will say, you know, what best Pinotage do you have? And we'll get them one bottle, and it doesn't cost them a fortune to do that. So
Absolutely.
Just saying, we can do that. So
I think as you explore and adventure, whether you're a novice like myself or you're very well versed like Michael and Charlotte in wines, I think it's incredible to explore everything. You know, we have this whole, I didn't even know, there's a periodic table of grapes behind me. Do you see that? That is a whole table of grapes.
It's pretty cool.
That's really cool. So when
my
you're
favorite.
interested in trying different things, we all know, name brands. We all know a lot of things that we are very comfortable with. But, if ever you're interested in reaching out or branching out, trying something new, getting a single bottle of something, we'll always do what we can to help you get that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I did. Because Father's Day is in 3 weeks. And I will not forget my dad. And don't you forget yours.
Yeah.
Or your dad that's in your village.
And that port. I mean, like
Perfect.
that's like port, I'm pretty sure. So
Absolutely.
that incredible port that you can't get anywhere but here, apparently, would be awesome. So
what are we going to do next week?
Next week, we've got, let me just tell you, before we tell you what wines we're doing for next week, it's so funny about this winery. It's called, I'll just go tell you, it's Marietta. And it's so funny that Pensacola has embraced Marietta Winery like nowhere else in the state. When you've got numbers as a distributor to meet every quarter or whatever you guys do, if you're in Pensacola, your numbers for to sell Marietta are higher than anywhere else in the state because they expect you to. Is that not true?
We're getting the nod of
Because they
approval.
expect you to sell so much, because Pensacola loves Marietta.
Many people have had it at restaurants and retailers for going on, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. I mean, maybe more. There's a.
Make good wine. Yeah.
We'll talk about the wines specifically, but yeah.
It's become a cult following in Pensacola. I mean, it's great everywhere, but in Pensacola, it's a cult following. So we are going to do we're going to start with the Old Vine Red, and it doesn't come with a vintage. It comes with a number, lot number. We're on lot number 69. I'm not going to say anything about that, but
Let's move on.
It's number 69, and this is it.
So good.
It's a Zen
The
blend.
Woodstock wine, Charlotte. It's the Woodstock wine. It's Woodstock. 69 Woodstock. That's what it is. It's Woodstock.
1969. It was a good year.
69 or 67?
I don't know what you were talking about.
Pretty sure it's 67.
It was 67.
Thank you, because it's 0.
Mhm.
Might have been born.
I know
In
that my
any
mother
event-
was too young to go, and she will never live it down.
Yeah, well.
It was a very good year, but this wine is a lot number of that, and it's a beautiful red blend. It's $15 a bottle, so again, you're talking about that moderate price.
Come out and grab this one.
You can enjoy.
Come out and grab this one this week. And then and it's a Zen blend. Mike, do you want to say anything more about it?
Well, with the OVR, it's Old Vine Red is obviously what it says on the label. The label changed a couple of years ago, a few years ago, so it's a little different than what some people might be familiar with. But they are a lot of old vines, and there's a lot of old vines of Zinfandel in California. It's one of the great things about Zinfandel in California. One of the things that makes it truly unique is because of just the flavor that those old vines give to a wine.
Right.
We've talked a lot about value, and I know we don't want to talk about all that all the time, but to think about grapevines that are sometimes 50, 75, 100 years old, and to think about you're getting it for $15.99 or whatever it is, that's incredible. It's a blend, and it's a non-vintage blend. So
Right.
it won't have a vintage year on it. It does not say 2018 or 2019. They are aging different vintages in barrels and then selecting them and then blending them back into each other.
Right.
And because of that, you're able to make a wine that's greater than the sum of its parts for each vintage. If you have a challenging year for certain things,
Right.
you make up for it.
There's nothing bad with a non-vintage wine. I mean, people, just because it's got a vintage, that's awesome because it tells you what it is. But having a non-vintage is, like you said, you can take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and blend it together and make it something that's super special. So.
And with climate change, I mean, I can tell you, if you don't believe it, if you're listening, I work in the wine business. It exists. You're going to see more non-vintage wines, I think, in ways you would not expect as the years go along. And we're seeing more of them all the time now, but not as many from California and places like that because the land is a little more expensive. But in other countries, you're seeing a lot of non-vintage whites and reds that come out. And I think that's by necessity. So I urge people to not be scared of that because it's a way for us as wine people to make your wine the way that we know you like it and still be able to get it to you, basically.
It falls in the same line of thought of when years ago when we started migrating towards twist caps versus corks. It wasn't indicative of the wine being any less delicious or amazing. It was just a process change that needed to happen based upon the current standards of.
Well, and we actually should have talked about that with Australian wines. So Australian wines, 25 years ago had a cork burning and said, we're not doing any more cork. We're going to do screw top from now on. And there are some few exceptions to that, but the majority of Australian wines are all screw top. So, I mean, it's not, there's nothing wrong with a screw top wine.
Yep. Especially if you're going to drink it within a few days of buying it. If it's not something.
Oh yeah, and you can get a bottle of Yalumba with a screw cap on it that will cost you a fair amount of money if you really want it. And I'm happy to bring it. I'm happy to bring it to you if you do want that. But there are some really small production wines that have screw caps on them. So yeah, again, same thing. I think more California wineries will go to that. That method.
For sure. We'll try it. We'll let you know what we think.
I'll get Camila to send me a bottle.
Wine that we'll try next week that we've already gotten in house. So pick up your bottle.
We have them both
sell out this week. I do need to say that before we get too far along, we sold out of the Viognier today. I have one bottle of the Shiraz left, so we're almost out of everything. So definitely go ahead and
put some more in, or we'll take orders. But point being is that you need to come get it before the wine tastings. And so the Old Vine Red, we've got plenty in right now.
Yep.
And then the Armay. Tell us about this one. This is a blend also.
Yeah, it's mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, and if I believe correctly, there's some Petit Verdot in there. Is it Merlot also? Am I missing Merlot? Yeah, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot. So basically a Bordeaux style blend, but really, and we can and we'll talk more about it with our special guest next week as far as how the wines are made. But just like with the Yalumba wines, we're talking about a wine here that's not going to punch you in the face.
Yes.
With a lot of oak and high alcohol that's not in balance. These are wines that are really indicative of the fruit that is in them and also makes for better food wines. It's another one of the reasons why Marietta is very popular here is because people can drink a Zinfandel when it's very hot out. But the fruit is so clean and is so, I know it sounds stupid, but fruity. They taste like the grapes the way that the grapes are supposed to taste. And
real quick, can you tell us who will be joining us next week
Scott Bilbro, who's the winemaker and owner of Marietta Cellars, will be with us next week. And he's I guess it would be second generation now because they've been around since the 80s.
Yeah.
His father started the winery, and now he is the winemaker. And his brother is also a winemaker at Limerick Lane, I believe, if you guys are familiar with Limerick Lane. So there's it's a really great winemaking family, and they are very passionate about what they do.
Awesome. We can't wait to see them.
Very pure wines. So it's going to be really cool.
Well, we hit an hour and 5 minutes, so I think we're going to wrap up today. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Like we said, next week we got the Marietta Cellars wines, and we will see you then. Bye. Bye.
Wait.
Oh, wait. You have to do it. No, okay.
If I don't get the right seal on it, you guys are just going to think that I'm just being.
Do it quick. Do it quick.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to embarrass myself. My wife sounds like if you hear my wife play it, it sounds like you're watching Crocodile Dundee.